How do you explain what you do to the person reading your CV when they're not technical? In this video, I'll show you exactly how Richard Feynman can help in the search for a job nearly 40 years after his death. It may sound strange, but bear with me. After all, Feynman was a physicist, not a recruiter, not a career coach. But he understood something that turns out to be incredibly useful when you're job hunting, especially later in your career. Feynman once wrote, "Never say you'll give a talk unless you know clearly what you'll talk about and roughly what you'll say." For a long time, I thought great speakers were just born that way. Some people had it, some people didn't. I assumed I didn't. But eventually I realized that wasn't true at all. Great speakers aren't magical. They prepare, they think, they work out what they're actually trying to say. And once I saw that, something else clicked. Job searching works exactly the same way. Most people at this stage aren't failing because they lack skills. They're failing because they can't explain what they actually do. Especially once you've been doing this for a few years. At that point, you can't treat your CV as a quick administrative task. You just can't update the dates, add a few new tools, and hope for the best. You need to be intentional, and this is where Richard Feynman becomes surprisingly useful. This isn't about rewriting your CV to please the algorithms. It's about understanding your own work well enough to explain it clearly. Feynman is well known for many things, but his learning method, called the Feynman technique, is simple. It's almost annoyingly simple, but it's powerful because it forces clarity, and clarity is exactly what most CVs lack. The technique has 4 steps: study, teach, find the gaps, and simplify. Let's walk through each one of these and apply it directly to your CV and your job search. So step 1, study. What is it you actually do? When Feynman said study, he didn't mean memorizing facts. He meant understanding the core idea. So for your CV, the core idea, what value do you bring? Not your job title, not your list of technologies. Your value. Here's a simple but uncomfortable exercise. Write down in plain language who you are professionally and how you help. If you're an engineer, try not to start with tools. Start with outcomes. For example, I take messy, fragile systems and make them reliable. I help teams deliver hardware that doesn't fail in the real world. Notice how none of that mentions a single technology, and yet it's far more informative. Most experienced engineers are far better than they realize, but they hide it behind bullet points and acronyms. This step forces you to see your own experience clearly. Step 2. Teach. Explain it like a human. Now comes the interesting part. Pretend you're explaining what you do to someone intelligent, but not technical. Not a child. You're not dumbing down, you're just removing the fog. Instead of saying, I implemented a microservices architecture using Kubernetes and Istio, try saying, I structured our software so changes didn't ripple through the system and break everything. That's the same work, but one version communicates and the other just signals membership of a club. Look, here's a practical test. Write your professional summary as if you're explaining your job to a smart friend. Let's say they work in marketing or operations. That version, the slightly informal version, the jargon-free, is probably better than what you've currently got on your CV. So this is why this step matters. Recruiters aren't impressed by complexity. They're impressed by understanding. If you can explain what you do clearly, you signal experience, confidence, and leadership. Step 3. Find the gaps. The uncomfortable audit. This is the step most people skip because it's uncomfortable. As you explain your story, pay attention to where it breaks down. Where does it get vague? Where do you start adding extra detail to cover uncertainty? Ask yourself this question: what part of my career do I avoid talking about? That's the gap. Sometimes it's a real skills gap. Maybe it's the industry moved on and you didn't. It happens. Other times it's just a framing problem. You did some solid work, but you're describing it in a way that sounds dated or passive. This step tells you where to invest effort, what to learn, what to reframe, and what to stop apologizing for. Step 4, simplify. One clear story. Pull everything together. You're aiming for a single coherent narrative, a story that connects your past experience to today's problems in the job market. Your CV, your LinkedIn profile, your interview answers, they should all tell the same story. Not in the same words, but with the same message. When you do this, something interesting happens. The rest of the job search starts to get easier. When you read job descriptions, you can see exactly what matters. When you network, you don't sound vague or apologetic. Instead of saying, I'm open to opportunities, you can say, I'm looking for roles where I can apply my systems experience to high-risk, high-reliability projects. In interviews, you can explain complex work using simple stories. Use a problem-action result method. And when it comes to negotiation, you understand your value well enough to justify it calmly. This is why the Feynman technique is so effective, so powerful later in your career. Feynman believed that if you can't explain something simply, you don't understand it well enough. In a job market that reduces people to keywords, this approach helps you reclaim your narrative. It's not about dumbing down 5-10 years of experience. It's about revealing what actually matters. And that's how you stop being just another CV in a pile and start being seen as someone who solves real problems. So clarity is necessary, but it's not sufficient. If you're spending most of your time on job boards, you're likely wasting effort. In this video, I'll explain why that happens and what experienced professionals should be doing instead.